So now as two grimoires. I don't really know entirely how I feel about this specifically being the increase that is going to get. I'm not against it or anything because it makes sense, obviously, with the four-leaf clover grimoire in reality going to Tedia's child. That this is Yuno's original spade grimoire, and I do think it makes sense. And what makes sense is more important than like kind of personal theories and whatnot. I still think it's just going to be really strange seeing with two grimoires, and I'm really curious as to what it's going to be that he's going to end up coming in here with. Like, if my personal preference would be something that either that kind of just adds on to the win, not something that's completely separate, but it's something that just together, like the two of them will just kind of like just run together and be way more powerful. I really do like the idea of it being like a temperature based magic, is obviously with that like beam of light coming in from the sky like during the chapter, as well as like the cold nature of the Spade Kingdom and whatnot. Like temperature magic would be really cool, and you can do something like manipulate the weather. I think that would be a really cool improvement for Yuno's abilities, and J Cloud's much aspired wanting for cloud magic can finally become a thing within Black Clover. But this chapter did give us a lot of good content on Yuno. I think that was really needed because the arc itself is very set on Yuno. This is a rival set arc. It's funny because like you can look at two different rival, kind of sort of rival, but pretty much the same thing as like the equivalent for Yuno in other series. You look at like Gray and Tartarus for Fairy Tail, and Uryu in the 1,000-Year Blood War for Bleach. I won't go into any spoilers for people who haven't gotten to those arcs in respective series, but with Gray, it was way more focused on it being for him than like what Uryu got, because Uryu had started out for him, and then there are like these massive gaps of time where he's just not on screen, not doing anything, and it kind of felt like that a little bit with Yuno. So it was odd that this was a Yuno set arc, but we didn't really get a whole lot of because like we got the opening part, and then the whole confrontation of him standing up against like the captain's decisions and stuff when he decided he wanted to go over to the Spade Kingdom, and like right after that we got into his fight with Zenon, and for the most part until like a chapter or so ago, it was just we would get a couple panel peers into it, like when Asta was going to defeat the ancient demon that was attacking the Clover. We only saw Zenon and Yuno for like a couple of panels. It hasn't been as focused on him as you'd expect, but it looks like now is where a lot of that is really coming out and getting a lot of focus. So in this chapter was blown way back into an era where a bunch of grimoires was. You had Langris and Finral fighting against Zenon. Legitimately, I still do not believe that the Twin Devils had the Devil Hearts. Tabata has been very strongly emphasizing the Devil Hearts in any point that any character has them, of the difficulty of killing them with it, as well as emphasizing its existence on said character and bringing up you have to go after this in order to defeat him. But like the twins, they just got chopped. I feel like with Langris's magic, like the degree of spatial magic, it is how they say like it's cutting space, it's going through space. He's not hitting you with magic using spatial abilities, he's using spatial attacks to attack. So stuff like general durability is not going to come into play. If a character has specifically defensive and resistance abilities against spatial abilities, that's one thing. But it's not every character is going to have it. It's like Julius's time manipulation. It's not the same kind of hacks as like a lot of the characters have. Something like just look over at what was his name, William's whole like mana draining with his seeds. Obviously they can get to a character who's just going to be so overwhelming for him, he's not going to really have that full capabilities, whereas something like time acceleration, because it has to do with Asian time as well as like space, it's a completely different ballpark when you get into abilities like that. It's one of the reasons why Julius is always going to be useful in fights, just from the concept of his magic, similar to like Dante with singularity and stuff. But with his magic and Finral's speed and reactions, and the fact that teleporting is instantaneous, they could have probably chopped Nama and Lilith like directly in half, as long as they were fucking around. Like, they're not taking him seriously, they could have gotten in those hits. Because if it wasn't for the Devil Heart in Zenon, he'd be dead this chapter. He would have been chopped in half, GG. Because the devil hearts, you have to be using potent enough devil magic, arcane magic, or saint stage in order to destroy them. The spatial magic, though it did tear through Zenon's body, like it went right through, it doesn't mean that it was going to destroy the heart. The heart was unaffected because it doesn't have that attribute, like any of those attributes needed in order for it to be affected in of itself. Like at a ability like base root, there's obviously that whole transition of needing any of those to get even affected, even with the hacks. So like Julius, it is a little weird that like that degree of spatial magic is not arcane, but like time manipulation is arcane. Obviously there's way more spatial mages in the series than time mages, but there's only one that attacks like Langris. So I don't know, we only have that one super spatial erasure character, so Langris' whole setup I guess isn't as hype as Julius's, but that doesn't really do it for them. Like once Yuno looks back, Langris and Finral are defeated, and he's bringing up that if he doesn't do anything, they're going to die, and that nothing he's doing ends up is pretty much working. Nothing that he's worked up about is actually helping him win this fight. And he's like thinking back to like where it all started, and you know, with like in this in general, but also like him and his whole journey in the Magic Knight. Like you have him thinking back to the Golden Dawn being killed, the confronting of the other captains, him training, but that ends up just pretty much like hurting him because he's like, is this really the end? Is this it? And then it goes back all the way to the beginning when he first kind of like, you know, first joined the Magic Knights, was first got his grimoire and everything that he's gone through. And even after all that, he still swore that he was going to, you know, to avenge them and get back as captain. But on top of that, he made a vow with Asta, and he's not going to just give up. Like, that makes sense. Like, it'd be weird for him to give up here when he's so close to Asta, and obviously Asta's drive to keep going is one of the things that, you know, is always admired about him. But that's when he gets spoken to by Licton Tedia's child, whose spirit is still in there, and a grimoire comes over to Yuno. So because Yuno's own magic he hasn't used yet, like this is his innate original magic. I don't know if it's gonna be something like crazy different. Like I know some people talk about sun magic, but like that, I don't know that like there's like the whole sunshine scene like in this chapter, but also there's the whole Golden Dawn, the sun rising. I don't really know if I like it because like here's the thing. One aspect about like the elves reincarnating is they chose, like they went into bodies that used similar magic to what they had when they were alive. So going from sun to wind would be really weird. I don't really know. We don't know much about, you know, his parents' magic, but at the same time, I feel like it has to be something that is a variant of wind magic. Because when you look at the elves back in the day, like they were way more towards regular magic, and as well as humans at that time too. It wasn't until like years later that like more complex magic started to form. So similar to what was it, the elf that took over Rill's body had picture magic, whereas Rill has painting magic. It's just a newer variant of it. So like maybe the child that Licton Tedia had was wind magic, but Yuno's is just something that's a higher degree of said magic. I know Quan Credible made a theory video of it being like aether magic, you know, pretty much like Wind of God. So it could be arcane, just like a higher end version. Could go into the whole idea of how he's going to be fighting this. Obviously, he's of a royal bloodline in the Spade of itself, but also the Spade, like the highest group of people in the Spade. So he should have a pretty OP magic just from being in that line, because Tabata has been pretty set on giving anybody of royal blood pretty good magic. Even Augustus, his magic is good. He's just himself is not strong. Like he's got light magic. Even in his state of probably doing zero hard work his whole life, it's still an OP magic, and he'd probably be pretty strong if he actually worked. But you know, with two grimoires, the combination of the two grimoires is going to be a big question mark for me, because how is he going to use them in conjunction with each other? And I still don't think that he's going to be able just to run over Zenon now that he has these two grimoires. I think there's somebody else that's going to pretty much show up, like come up and help. But this is going to be the big turning thing for Yuno, and obviously make Yuno more powerful. So where he comes into this is going to be really strange. He shouldn't have that many spells. Like looking at the grimoire, And you look at like his, and then look at the other Grimoire. The other Grimoire looks pretty open. Like, I'd be okay if Yuno started, because Yuno's a prodigy. Like, if Yuno started out with a couple of spells, like 2 to 3 spells, as long as he's not already showing up with, like, whatever his trump card spells would be if he had this Grimoire. Like, it's really weird the way it's going to set up. Plus, I think with Bell, it'd be more beneficial if he has just a superior type of wind magic to add on to his wind magic that could also play into Bell. Because if it's a completely separate attribute, for whatever reason, then it's not going to be as beneficial for Bell to you know, pretty much combine with his magic. It would just be something that I think would get in the way of progression with Bell if Yuno's like stuck over messing with a completely different thing that she can't meld with properly. But now he's like saying he's going to save the kingdom and become Wizard King, and now he's going to defeat Zenon. So I really want to get to Yuno's magic. Like, that's one of the things I mentioned before. Power, like form, and like ability, like abilities by name, those are always like when they get teased at the end of chapters bother me the most. Something like this where it's like he has another magic, it's not hinted, it's like he straight up has it, but we don't know exactly what it is. Or in the case of us going Devil Union for the first time, it ended with him saying Devil Union, so I was super like impatient but also excited to see what his form looked like. And it's the same thing with this. Like, is this gonna bother me until we hit the spoilers? I just want to know what it is. Like, I just want to see it say, like, Yuno uses X magic. Is it a completely different thing? Is it something just better? I do think if he gets something that is what I would prefer, would be something even as simple as, like, Hurricane magic. Something that would just be really massive on top of his wind magic to pretty much just do some synergy stuff instead of it just being there. But anyway, other than that, comment below. Thumbs up the video, but friend the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But in that, I appreciate everybody who's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.